Alright, so today we're going to be doing a little upgrade to our intercooler. It's going to increase the airflow, and the kit that we have is from AFE Power. Purchased it from stage3motorsports.com. Not sponsored, not paid in any way, just who I chose to purchase it from. And these are going to be the hot and cold flow pipes that allow air in and out of the intercooler. And they are metal. They're powder coated metal, so it's supposed to be larger in diameter for more airflow, as well as more rigid, so there shouldn't be as much turbulence in these pipes. So the kit comes with these two metal pipes, and then of course here you see the bracket for your blow-off valve there, and then some clamps, a couple adapters, and some O-rings. So we'll go ahead and get started on this upgrade. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the filter box assembly to get it out of the way. We're also going to remove this intake here. You could do, this is the aftermarket air intake. It's about double the size of the factory one. You can see if you have a factory one, it'll probably be about half this size opening. This is the aftermarket one. Same company makes it, the AFE Power, and it's like 52 bucks. And it does make a difference. So that's the upgrade there. I'm going to be removing that along with the filter box assembly so that we can get down to the intercooler tube down there. Alright, so I've removed the top of the filter box as well as the filter. That's my K&N lifetime filter. I'll probably take the advantage of this time to wash it out as well. It's probably due for washing. And the air intake there. So the next thing I need to do is I need to disconnect this AC sensor here, and then I'm going to loosen that bolt there, and I should be able to remove the entire air box to get out of the way, because we need to get to that pipe right down there. Alright, there is one more bolt right there in the back of the air box that we're going to have to take out as well in order to remove the air box. And then this connector right here on the front, you should be able to just push it up from the bottom to release that, to get those wires out of the way. That might need two hands, but we're going to remove that connector, and then we can take the entire air box out as well as the bolt in the back. Alright, so I've got the air box out. There was the connector right there for the wires, and then there was another one right there for the wires. You got to pull those out of the way. This one was really stubborn. I needed to use some needle nose pliers to kind of pry it loose, but it did come out. Now we've got the whole air box out of the way, and we have easy access to that intercooler tube right there. Alright, so now we can see the pipes side by side. There's where it goes into the intercooler there, and then this is the new pipe, and it's going to come up. It has a clamp there. It looks like it gets a little bit bigger, and then it goes up, and it comes out right there, and that is your discharge valve there. That's going to be on this one here. So you can see that this pipe is smoother flowing, and it is bigger around than the original. Once I pull the original one out, I'll show you a side-by-side. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out of the way too, just to get a little bit more room, especially for the video. I don't think you have to do it at home if you're doing this, but I'm just making a little bit more room. So I loosened the hose clamp down there. I popped this disconnect here. It was right there in the side. I popped that out, and then I took this out. You pull the yellow clip out, and then this just slides off. So now I can take this whole boot out of the way and get a little bit more room in here. So this may be hard to show on camera, but this front disconnect here, it has these little wire clips, and I'm going to remove it just by getting the screwdriver underneath there and lifting out on both sides, and it should unclip, and then we should be able to slide this tube out. Alright, so we've got the bottom section of tube out. I'll show it to you off the vehicle in a minute. And then it comes up here. We're going to loosen this clamp here. We're going to loosen this clamp here. I already popped this connector loose from the side there. There's that little plug thing that connects it there. And then I disconnected it from the turbo blow-off valve. And that's going to set to the side. So once I get this loose, I should be able to remove this whole upper assembly. Alright, I've got all of the tubing disconnected. This is loose here. It'll slide out. The last thing I'd have to do is take that bracket bolt out right there. Alright, I took that bottom bolt out from the bracket underneath, and then the whole assembly comes right out. So now we can compare the factory setup to the aftermarket. So that's the factory, of course, and then here's the aftermarket. You can tell it's a lot smoother. This section of it, definitely, that top section, definitely larger diameter there. So you can see that's for increased airflow. You've got a nice aluminum spot there instead of that plastic mount for the turbo blow-off valve. So looks pretty good so far. Okay, there's a couple things we have to do before we put the new upgraded one in. So we've got to plug this hole. This came with the aftermarket pipe, and there is none in the factory, but it came with these little plugs. You can see the threaded insert there. So we're going to plug that hole because we're not using it. That may be used for different models or something. I'm not quite sure, but mine does not have anything here. So we're going to plug that hole. And also this spring clip here needs to get transferred from this side over to the new one. We have to reuse that hardware. All right, I did find out what that thread there for is. It's already capped off, of course, but it is for an aftermarket sensor that I won't be using. These two little clips are not reused. That's for the spring clip. I've already transferred it over to the new tube, and all I have to do now is put this O-ring inside there, and then I can install it back on the truck. Okay, the O-ring's installed inside the pipe. You can see there's kind of like a little recess in there for it, and that's where you would put that O-ring. Alright, so we're ready to reinstall the new hot side pipe inside the truck. I've already put the new adapter here. The old one is a 90 degree, and it's not going to work with this new pipe angle, so this is a 45 connector boot. One disappointing thing that I ran into with this kit was it came with 4 of these style clamps. You can see they're pretty heavy-duty clamps, very impressive looking. Got that spring in there and everything to keep them nice and tight. Problem is the diameter is wrong for this fitting. You can see it's larger here than here. So this one works and this one does not. So I have to use the factory hose clamps on this connection, which should be fine. It's just a disappointment that the kit didn't work out. And I tried everything to get that sucker to fit before I gave up on it. So unfortunately, this new clamp will not work in this location, so we had to use the factory hose clamp there. Alright, so I've just set the new pipe in place. I'm going to have to loosen these spring clips here, and this should push into place and seal up on that intercooler there. And on this end, I'll push this boot down onto that fitting, and then we will tighten everything up and then go from there. Alright, last step is installing this tube back onto the turbo blow-off valve housing. So I'm going to just squeeze this connector here with some pliers, and then it'll slide right on, and I'll just release it. We are not going to be installing the turbo blow-off valve in this video. I'm going to shoot another video immediately following this one because we're actually going to be upgrading that from the stock one. So I'm going to show that in the next video. So I will not be installing the factory blow-off valve here. If you are doing that yourself, it's just the same 3 bolts that were on the old unit, and you'll use the same screws even to put it back in. I'm sorry, the kit comes with 3 new screws because it's going into aluminum instead of plastic. But it's the same three screws that go back on, same holes and everything. But again, we're going to be upgrading the blow-off valve in the next video, so make sure you click on that one to see this portion of it. Alright, I've got one step ahead of you before I realized it, and I already started taking the other side out. So now we're on the driver's side. This is referred to as the cold side, and this is the old tube here. Pretty easy to get out. There's 2 hose clamps here and here, right on this rubber boot, that I've already removed, so sorry about that, you missed that part. But then you're going to pop this plastic clip here on this pipe, and that's just going to pop up just like it did on the other side. Very similar connection, and that you're just going to push out of the way. And then on the inside, you've got that spring clip to release, and then the whole unit just slides back and it'll slide out. Alright, so here's our here's our two pipes side by side, factory, aftermarket. There's not a whole lot of difference in diameter. You can see it's about the same. I'm thinking probably smoother airflow on the aftermarket one, because there's a couple slight bends in that one, and this one is smooth. So probably a little bit smoother airflow, but not much other difference. Remember that we have to take the spring clip off of this one to install on the aftermarket one. And then of course, before we install the pipe, we're gonna put that little plug in there because we're not using a aftermarket sensor. So it's gonna be easier to put that in there before I install the tube into the truck. All right, I've got the clip installed, I've got the plug installed, and then I also put that O-ring just on the inside, and now I'm ready to put it inside. All right, we had to do one last thing before we put the new pipe in. I had to take this factory boot out that was right down there. And we're putting this new one in. You can see it's slightly longer. I tried doing it with this one just because these new clamps are kind of a pain in the butt. But you can see it's noticeably shorter, so we definitely have to use the aftermarket one for this case. So once again, these fancy aftermarket clamps are not going to work because they just fit so tight that you can't even get anything together. So I'm going to be repurposing the factory hose clamps and tossing these ones to the side. They look fancy and all. Hopefully they didn't increase the cost of the kit too much because I'm not going to be using them. So that's a disappointment, but we're moving forward. Alright, we've got our new cold side pipe in. It's connected there using the clip, factory clip. Again, that plug is installed. You can barely see it from the side, but that plug is in there. And then we've got these two hose clamps. Again, the factory hose clamps on there with the new coupler boot. And then we've got this tube reconnected to that T-fitting. And the only thing that's not quite right is this little connector that just holds these two tubes together. It's a little bit different of an angle, mounting angle, so that's not going to snap back in, but that's no big deal there. Alright, so the only thing left to do is install the turbo blow-off valve there, and then put all of our airbox intake back together, and we'll be ready to fire it up. Ordinarily, I would show this part, reinstalling it, but I'm going to do that in a separate video because I'm actually upgrading that. So look for a different video on upgrading the throttle body. I'm sorry, it's called the turbo blow-off valve, or TBV. Sorry guys, I'm not an expert, just another shade tree mechanic like a lot of y'all. Anyway, we're gonna do that in a different video. So I'm gonna put everything else back together, and then I'm gonna put this in a different video. Alright, so I've got the factory airbox back in, of course my aftermarket K&N filter in there, and my new intake there. We're gonna go ahead and install the new turbo blow-off valve in another video, so stay tuned for that. But I'm gonna install that and I'm gonna fire this up. So you're gonna have to go into the next video to see the results of the new hot and cold side intercooler tubes. Alright, that's the end of this video. Join us in the next video to see us upgrade the turbo blow-off valve. See you guys.